Just in case we turn
Did
those
we
back.
hear anything about
If we turn those back
the
to
rooms at the high school for
I've got
kindergarten?
one up here too.
Yes, yep, it's all booked.
Okay.
Ready to go, and Ken responded to me saying thanks.
Okay, perfect.
I just need to circle back. The Kim Schultz, what's the girl's name?
I don't remember. I'll look.
The
Okay, it's
presentation,
5:30.
you booked the room and.
Oh, okay.
the auditorium.
Yes, okay,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, so it's all set.
Okay, thanks. Okay, it is 5:30. I will ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll call the meeting to order. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll give everyone a few more minutes to review the consent agenda items as listed in section 7. Okay. Anyone need more time? Okay. We would need a motion to approve the June 28th, 2023 regular board meeting agenda that you have in front of you as presented.
June or to?
Sorry.
Yeah, this is
is-
actually
Is
August.
June in there?
Yeah.
It does say
Okay,
June,
then-
yeah, so
I was gonna ask.
Sorry.
I'm just reading and not thinking, but yep, so I guess we'll need to make that correction.
I
A
move
mo-
to approve the August 28th, 2023 regular school board meeting agenda as presented.
Well, with that one correction, I guess, with the
Yes.
date, right?
Support.
Any conversation? Hearing none, all in favor, show of hands. Thank you.
Okay.
Motion moves. Guess we all wish it was June, right? Okay. Up first, under reports and presentations, 2023-24 Alpena expectations rising.
All right, good evening, everyone. We had a tremendous start to the school year. I had the opportunity to visit all the schools today, and everyone was in good spirits and excited to be back. And Besser's drop-off was really quite spectacular to see in action, with missing our main parking lot and a gravel bus loop at that time. But thanks to everyone that was involved. Staff was out, highly visible, helping. Parents got there early and ended up walking. Some of them parked in the hotel and things like that, and then walked down so that they didn't have to be in the congested area. So it just went tremendously well. And then as the work progresses this week, it'll get even more back to normal. So that was terrific. I entitled this Alpena Expectations Rising because I met with the staff twice last week to just kind of roll out where we're going with this year. And I had the opportunity to talk to them about all of the priorities that I shared with the board, I think in June or July. So I just wanted to take a moment and look at some of our academic achievement data. Because our friends in the media will be reporting shortly once the state of Michigan makes our scores for the 23 school year available. That'll be all the headline news. And those scores and what I'm talking about here are just a slice of what academic achievement and student achievement are. But unfortunately, for better or worse, test scores are what makes good headlines and sells papers and radio ads and things like that. So really want to just take a moment to talk about all the other successes that students have. We have, students going on to great things, great colleges, going into the military, going on to careers. Many of them own their own businesses while they're in high school. They just have many ways to show their achievement and success. But one of the things that's troubling for us is our data around standardized tests. That includes NWEA, MSTEP, PSAT, and SAT, and MyAccess. And so I rolled it out to the staff and just to give them a longer view of that data. And like we talked about, I think maybe in May or June, it's going to be a common theme coming back in front of the board and community to talk about it, and so that we understand what the reality is and what we're doing about it, and then hopefully as we go into next year, we can see some real progress. The good news is we are seeing signs of progress here, and we'll talk about it. So the slides that you're struggling to see are from our survey data that we sent out to parents last parent-teacher conferences. We do an annual survey. The question that this is showing is the schools succeed at preparing its students for future work. And then it's broken down by each of the buildings, AHS all the way down to Wilson. Purple and green is agree and strongly agree. Purple is strongly agree. So when you look across all of that, our parents, those that took the survey at that time, have some pretty strong favorable opinions that we're doing our job in preparing our students for future work. Does it detail out what that means and all of that? No, but it's just a passing question to gather some information. And then on this too, blue, strangely enough, is strongly disagree. Red is disagree, and orange is neutral. So again, when you're looking at the purple and blue, purple and green, agree and strongly agree, there's some positive feedback. Anywhere from 138 responses at a building, 179, to some of our smaller buildings have less of it. So that's interesting that they feel that, and again, I think that comes from there's more than one way to measure being prepared and being successful at that next level. But again, we're talking about that student achievement data. And it's difficult when you're talking about the state and their measures of accountability to keep a straight face and stay focused. The accountability system has just gone through a total 180 redesign. Try this doesn't work, try this, go on to something else. For many years, dating back, I'm not sure when, 2013 sticks out in my mind as when the state of Michigan really started to try to figure out how to cram everything a school district does into one symbol, letter, word, number, or something like that. They haven't found a meaningful way to represent a school's or a district's performance, but it doesn't stop them from trying, and it doesn't stop them from holding us accountable and changing that target on a regular basis. But the most recent attempt we have from the state to set some goals, it comes from the 2016-17 data. And I just want to back up and remind you that I think it was, again, Race to the Top or No Child Left Behind. The goal was 100% proficiency at every district, every student. That was quickly recognized as unachievable. And so they then started this morphing of those goals. But the ones that are currently out there, and it's being revised again, come from our 2016-17 data, and they have two long-term proficiency goals, which are coming up in 24-25. So for ELA, it's 60% proficiency across the district, and for math, it's 47.55% across the district. That's on the MSTEP, and I think that factors just the MSTEP. MyAccess would be separate, PSAT, SAT. But So what I did here is I just plotted that out, and I do apologize, some of these slides aren't as pretty or consistent as they should be. But the red line there, and this is ELA, is where the baseline data was in 16-17, and then it goes up to 24-25, that higher number of 60%. Then the blue line shows where our performance is in the other years. The long blue line is just a general trend on that data. So the important point is...
Dave, can you back up one slide?
Sure.
So the state is asking you to have 47% of the students at proficiency in math, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Subject to change, though.
Yeah.
My guess is, as this date comes up, they're going to have to adjust it to some degree.
A question.
Yeah.
Are those baseline values our values or the state's?
These baseline values are our values.
Our values, okay.
Yeah. So, when you look at this, I guess here's what I want to say. There's no test in 1920 because it was suspended due to COVID. We are 3 years out from COVID, essentially, pandemic learning and all of that. We need to move on from that and not, I don't want to say anyone's using it as an excuse, but the more important thing is there was a downward trend in that data prior to 1920. And we need to address that. We can't just get comfortable in pandemic did this to us, and therefore we're trying to figure that out. The good news is from 21 to 22, there's a pretty good increase there. Now this is all grade levels. There's, depending on the different grade levels, we'll go into it a little bit. There's some ups, some downs, but overall, what we were credited with, we showed improvement here. Same thing, again, sorry, a little inconsistent, but you see in math that downward trend started before COVID, and then coming back from COVID, it's not as pronounced, but it is a slight increase in the performance. This chart here is ELA, and if I had my pointer, if you look at it, grades 3 through 8 on the left-hand side there, and if you go across, so third grade going across from year to year to year, those are new third graders every year. And so if you look at it from 16-17, 43.1% proficient, all the way over to 39.3% proficient, the third grade coming in each year was stable, but with a slight downward trend. Question, Eric? Or?
I'm just looking at 7th grade.
Yeah.
That's a
And I'm going to try and make, no,
Yeah.
that's not going to work. I was going to try and make it a little bit bigger for you. Yeah, that did not go well at all. So, going across, there's, stable, down, down. 7th grade goes down, and the 8th grade goes up from 49% to 57%. Keep in mind, those are different students every year sitting in that particular grade level. Now, the color coordinating that goes diagonal is the same group of students moving from year to year to year. So if you look at the 16, 17, 13, third grade, they're in 17, 18, they're in 4th grade. And then that same group of students is in 5th grade the following year. Following year, they didn't have a M-STEP test, and so on and so on. So that is what they call the cohort view, and it basically looks at the percentage of proficient students in that grade level. So it's not a one-to-one match because students move in, students move out, and those kind of things. But out of the testing population, you can see the general trend is that we're decreasing in percent proficient over the years. Now there are some strong points. 3rd grade in 16, 17 is, last year was in 8th grade, and we're 57%, so they grew by about 14% in the amount of proficiency.
How did they went from 22 to 57?
Yes. So 2021, this is what you're looking at?
Yep.
Yep.
I mean, even, they've all, I guess the only one that didn't really make an explosion was, the green.
Yeah.
But regardless of the
Consistent.
cohort, when they hit 7th grade, they bottom out.
Yep.
Regardless of the cohort.
Yep.
Kind of a
I
little
just
bit-
was
And then-
curious how you doubled in a year.
And so that's one of many questions. Again, keep in mind, this is 3 hours of a student's life. And if they decide they're not gonna do their best, they may, be, completely not proficient or something like that. There's so many variables that go into this that you really have to dive deeper into those particular data sets and see what happened. And that's why the state also uses a student growth measure as well, where it looks at how much our students grow from year to year. But right now, I just wanted to share overall proficiencies, meaning they passed the test, they didn't. But yeah, there are some interesting things there that certainly require more looking at. Now, I didn't get to set up my joke for those that were there on, what was that, last Thursday?
Yeah.
So one of the, I still remember my board president, the board president, making the comment in response to, in my previous district years ago, when the state was trying to revamp the scorecard at that time. And one of the ideas that the State Board of Education, I believe, had conversations about was maybe we could give them an animal shape based on their performance. The school would get a zebra, or the school would get a square, or the school would get some shape or animal. And yes, just like you're looking at me now, we looked at it, and so we went through this meeting where the superintendent rolled out, where they were thinking at the time, and our board president at the time, after another topic on the agenda went by, he goes, "You get a purple moose for that." What the heck does a purple moose mean? It's this constant quest to find some very simple way to represent the performance of a school district. So I didn't provide that context when I met with the staff. So the other thing is we can't talk about the 23 data right now. The state promised us years ago that we would get this data immediately and we could start making important decisions off of it. Well, it is August 28th. They took the test the last day on May 20th, May 25th. We still don't have data that we can talk about. We have data that I can look at, as I mentioned before. I can look at every single student's data, but we can't look at it in meaningful ways. So I just put out there's a Mona Lisa coming. Is she smiling? Isn't she smiling? We will have some positives. We will have some not so positives. The joke, even without that explanation, and maybe in spite of that, it went over pretty well, I think, right? Okay. So, yeah. So now this is math. The same view, looking across from year to year, third graders across the district. You do see an upward trend from 16 to 21. Fourth grade, it went down. Fifth grade went down. Sixth grade went down. Seventh grade went down significantly, half of it. And then eighth grade went down as well. And now if you look at the groups moving from grade level to grade level, it's even more pronounced than it was in ELA. So your third grade in 16-17 went from 40% proficient down to 27.2% proficient. And if you go through, you can see it's pretty common trend there. We can't talk about 2023, but it's a sad kitten. Kittens are nice and we like them, but this one's sad. So it's kind of mixed emotions again. And so we will see, as soon as that data is released, we'll have some more information there. I don't mean to make light of this in any way. It's so frustrating dealing with a moving target from the state that, it seems their number one goal is to publicly shame districts. Same thing with SAT. These are the percentage of students that met college readiness standards from 2017. Now, interesting, math was heading upwards. But again, if you look at the overall trend from 17 to 22, math is down slightly, and ELA is down, about 15 points. This one is, so NWEA. The red line is NWEA puts out, I should have looked up what RIT stands for, because I know you're going to ask me, Dr. Lawson.
So we figured out wasn't it somebody's name?
It's someone's name
Yeah,
that
so it's
developed
just
the metric.
Yeah, it's just, we got it now.
Perfect. So when a student takes NWEA test, they get a score. It starts, I don't know, in the mid-100 and sums and goes up to the mid-200s, low 200s. So they have a norm based on all students' performances across the nation that they use as their reference point. That's what that red line is. So in 2021, due to the pandemic, they recalibrated their norm, which is why you see the red line drop and then level off, at a different level there. And even though it looks like it goes down between 18 and 19, it's an optical illusion. The norm for the test is the same. Now, what I did here was I took the average of all our norms and their norms, our district average, and just came up with that number. So that's just compiling all of our 18-19 performance into one RIT number. That's what that blue line shows. Once you break that apart, get into grade levels and all of that, there's obviously a lot more data to look at. But what I told the staff is we're just looking at trends here to see what's going on. And this one's a little different, a nice spike in 1920, and then, it goes down consistently since then.
Question about this one.
Yeah.
So what is the normal range of RIT scores? I mean, it doesn't appear by the number, 202 versus 205 to be a very big deal, but I mean, what's the normal range?
Yeah, so again, did you by any chance have the lowest RIT?
Not the lowest and the highest, but each grade level it goes up. There's like up to 260, 52.
Is that the
as low
highest?
as like 80 or 90.
Yeah, so the idea, like the SAT, the score gets bigger as you move up in age, grade level. And so, yeah, 205 to 202 doesn't look that significant. Again, it's all averaged down, so it's suppressing some of those differences there. And the red number shows the average. So what it does is it just looks at the results of a fifth grader, and that becomes the norm. A fifth grader across the nation taking this, they compile that then into the norm as their reference point. And it doesn't move. It hasn't moved in many years prior to the pandemic. It's what all their calculations are based off, for student response or student scores and all of that. But to know like the variance, again, there's some big variances and then some closer variances. What I'm trying to show here is we're still below most of the norms at all of the grade levels. And a lot of times people will think that the norm is the goal. It's not necessarily the goal because that's just the norm. You want to strive to be above that. So this is math. Again, apologize, this one has all a little bit clearer written out here. So anyway, going back a little bit longer, you can see that trend is there. So don't share this to be, all is not well. We do have signs of improvement here, there, and everywhere. My main goal was to have everyone, I wanted to have a chance to talk to the district about what our data is. And so this was a great time to roll it out. I had some people come up and say, yeah, but you gotta pull this number, you gotta do, yeah, that's what we're gonna do this year. We're gonna dig into this and really, try to understand, what we're seeing in these numbers and, all the great things, all the great investments and strategies and practices that we're putting in. We're having student success, except for on standardized tests. And again, I was very careful, I believe, to say, it is a test. It's a 3-hour period, it's a 2-hour period, it's one very small snapshot in a student's, academic year. But this is troubling data that we need to be able to say, actually, this data is really good, and so is everything else. It just gives more credibility to all of the successes that we know are going on. That's essentially it.
We give NWEA fall and spring, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And one of the big pieces that we need is, because NWEA is a fair predictor of MSTEP, SAT, they have a linking study that can give us a good idea. But we really need to hone in on an internal system that helps us track students throughout the year prior to the MSTEP, the MyAccess, SAT and PSAT, so that we can make those adjustments during the year. We're working with data, we're making adjustments based on that data, but we just need to have a consistent system. And that work started, prior to COVID, to build those common assessments and those things. And then our attention was pulled away for many reasons there. So, we're doing great things in the district. We're investing in our instructional coaches, and we're hiring people, and we're putting in a new curriculum, and we're doing things to respond to this. But this is going to be a focus here going forward.
No, Dave, obviously the data is somewhat difficult to interpret because there's so many different variables, but regardless of that, standardized testing it's a national standard, so we can see where we're at as comparison to the rest of the country. And if we're falling below that, obviously, those are things we're looking at, what you're saying that we're gonna do as far as following up with the data throughout the year. Throughout most of these that we've seen, there appears to be certain low-hanging fruit in certain grade or certain topic material, which, how do I frame this? But in a district that, teaches those topics, that's somewhat of an area that we should be able to hone in on, because, the gym teacher doesn't teach math, right? And so we can focus in on the math or the reading, and if we're seeing areas that are low-hanging fruit that can be easily intervened on, obviously that's what you're gonna be looking at. And so I guess my question was, when can we expect a follow-up to this to see, now that we've analyzed the data, these are areas that we're going to focus on to try to improve. If we've got one area that's doing well, maybe not put some resources into that particular aspect and put it in places we need it. 7th grade clearly is a stronghold, and a lot of that has to do with their age. Trust me, I've got a 7th grader. I get that. Okay, I get that. I'm not accusing anybody of anything.
Yeah.
But if that's an area that we can certainly bolster or strengthen, then by all means we should do so. And so when could we expect some sort of follow-up to this?
Well, I think the first piece is because, there are some good pieces in the data that's about to be released. And so, to me, that, as we've talked, that's kind of like that benchmark, that baseline data. Once we get the 22-23 data, we'll have 3 years data after the pandemic to look at and kind of go from there. So I would expect to, be able to talk about the potential response to that data, if it's supposed to come out later this week or possibly next week, we can begin that process at that point. And then, possibly come back to the board in September or October, and again, keep the process in front of you and the community as to what we're doing, what we're seeing.
So it certainly is interesting that our pre-pandemic numbers are actually lower than the post-pandemic averages for the nation. So it's obviously somewhat concerning.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And I don't want to, again, we've done a lot of great work. We've got people
I'm not
working
belittling
hard.
that at all.
I just want to remove this as an excuse for anyone, you know, and that's what it really comes down to, and we can't do that right now.
Okay.
And there is value to those assessments as well, but.
Have we done much to look at attendance as it relates to specific kids or groups of kids and their scores over time?
Well.
Because that's obviously an issue. If the kids aren't in the building, there's not a whole lot we can do with them.
Yeah. You know, I mean, we do have our early warning,
Right.
our attendance interventions with them. I don't know that as a system that we're looking at that attendance data and comparing it directly to their performance on those tests. But that's another one of those variables.
Sure.
And, you know, we're doing a lot to encourage people to come to school, you know, increase that attendance, sitting down with the families to find solutions, so.
If you could go back one slide, this one I thought was really, really interesting. Maybe even, I don't know, could have an issue, there could be an issue with the curriculum. It looked like they all got so much better in 8th grade, each of those cohort colors. It's almost like there's something, either something wrong with the test, or there's something they didn't get until that grade level, which might beg the question, is there something in our curriculum we're not giving them that shows up on this test that we could plug in a year or two earlier?
Yeah.
That was just, I mean, I know it could be completely coincidental, but kind of looks like there could be some kind of, because it's dramatic,
Yep.
you know, in every cohort. But anyway, that was just my thought.
And alignment, you know, is a big part of what we looked at with, you know, the new curriculum, so.
When I was still working, we would get lots of data on the MEP in those days. And we would sit down in staff meetings and go through every item and how many chose A, how many B, C, and D, and so forth. And then we try to figure out why there was such a preponderance of kids who made the wrong choice. And maybe it wasn't in our current materials, or maybe there was one word in the question that could confuse the kids. But as you said earlier, the scores, shouldn't call it stuff, the scores came so late after the kids had tested that we couldn't do anything with the numbers once we got them. And even if we did find an item that everybody got wrong and could figure out why, there was nothing we could do about it, because it might be on the test the following year anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm talking 20, 25 years ago now. I'm not.
Well, it's the same
Talking
true today. Again, we are
Okay.
3 months after the test,
Right.
and we are waiting for.
But it was even
the
longer than that.
results. Oh,
Yeah.
I can imagine, so.
Yeah.
Two, remember, so 1920, there was no test, and then 2021, 75% of the students in the state of Michigan took the test.
They could opt out.
Because again, that was following.
Yeah.
So, you know, these are, again, we're just looking at the trends, you know. Would I bet my life on the accuracy of 2021? Not really. But at least now we'll have 3 years of data that we can look at and really start diving in. And again, you know, all of these practices were there. I will say the pandemic disrupted that kind of data analysis because the test didn't exist. Only 3/4 of the students took the test across the state, and we were dealing with a pandemic. So from that aspect, you know, we're just kind of going back and getting back into the routine there. And now we have, or will someday, have data that we can use.
When, I know as like parents, when the students take the NWE, they get the results quickly and they get a printout of it. Is it the same for MSTEP? Do families get reports?
They do.
I mean, eventually.
They're arriving. Yeah.
Shipped to the buildings in the fall for last year's data.
Yeah.
And we send them home.
And I think I sent you a screenshot of the data that we can view digitally. It does. It lists, you have to break it down to the specific grade and subject in one building. So we can't even look at a subject across the district. Can't even look at it across the, well, you can look at it across the building, but not the district. But then it's just rostered data. We don't even know percentage of, and those kind of things. So it's very, and it does have shapes. It has circles, triangles, and squares. And so, there you go, Mona Lisa. But then, yeah, the next phase is that they mail a hard copy of those individual results to the schools to distribute. And those should be coming out soon. And then they release all of the data where we can start talking about it. Because it is currently embargoed and we can't talk in open meetings about the data, which is why those pictures are there. It's not a process that helps us.
So much for the age of computers.
Yeah, if you'll permit me, I've been going on too long, but there, when you look at the third grade reading law that has now been reversed, I just remember sitting in a professional development by the state of Michigan, and I don't know what year it was, but I had a lot less gray hair at that time. The state stood in front of a group of people from the districts and said, the test will be scored and the results will go from, I think it was, what's the test? BAA, which was what they called the old testing state data warehouse. It would go from there over to CEPI, which is all student information system, and they would mail a letter to all the families by May 30th. And laughter just erupted in the room because they couldn't even get us test results within 3 months, and they were putting it out there that it's gonna be seamless. It's just you're gonna finish that test, hit finish, scores will be tabulated. If you were not proficient, they'd generate a letter to the family saying you're not proficient. Has to have been at least 5, 6, 7 years ago that they were talking about this, and we're still waiting for any of it to come to fruition. Don't know how I got on that, but it's been a very frustrating process, and I guess that would be a good thing because it's kind of taken a backseat right now coming out of the pandemic as well. Let us get back to doing what we do. So, great news is we had an awesome start to the school year this year. Everyone's in class ready to learn. Our buildings are beautiful and ready. And we'll be coming back to the board and community with how we're responding and what our data is.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Any citizens or delegations to address the board? Seeing none. Up next are action items. We have the approval of the July 31st, 2023 organizational meeting minutes, approval of the July 22nd, 2023 monthly workshop minutes, approval of the August 21st, 2023 special meeting minutes. We would need a motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented.
So moved.
Second. Second.
We have a motion on the floor. Any conversations regarding these items? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, show of hands. Thank you. Up next, additional business requiring board action. Full-time pupil status, we talked about this at our workshop. We'll need a motion to adopt the requirements for full-time pupil status.
So moved.
Second.
Support?
Any further conversation on this? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, show of hands. Okay, thank you. All right, second reading of Neola policies. We had the first reading at our workshop last week. Up first is policy 5611, due process rights. I think, again, the main change was striking that the superintendent board, no slash, must act publicly. That's always done privately, so remove that language.
Do you want an individual motion for each one
Sure.
of these?
No, it's all
Just-
together. I
just
just didn't know if
throw
we
it all
wanted to
together.
go
Okay.
through each one, or anyone had any questions. That was the first one. 754002, the web accessibility content apps and services. Policy 7540.03, the student technology acceptable use and safety. 754004, staff technology acceptable use and safety. And policy 8315, information management. We need a motion to approve policies 5611, 7540.02, 7540.03, 7540.04, and 8315 as presented.
I'll make the motion, but I don't see any point in reading those numbers again.
Support. Okay, we have a motion and support. Any conversation? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, show of hands. Thank you. Up next, new business, human resources staff updates.
Good evening. We have 20 new hires this month. For professional staff, we have Brian King, PE teacher, Lincoln and Ella White Elementary. Julie Hassey, kindergarten teacher, Ella White Elementary. Amy Kitkuski, first grade teacher, Besser Elementary School. Alicia Deeds, English teacher, Alpena High School. Nancy Rucker, English teacher, Alpena High School. Derek Regglesworth, social studies teacher, Thunder Bay Junior High. Christina Colleen, fifth grade teacher, Ella White Elementary. Cynthia McAllister, special education teacher, Alpena High School. For rehires, Christina Cosbit, Title I teacher, Wilson Elementary. Karen Cordes, special education teacher, Ella White Elementary. For support staff, we have Judy Jackson, food service helper, Alpena High School. Karen Haken, food service helper, Hinks Elementary. Philip Anderson, cafeteria aide, Thunder Bay Junior High. Caleb Gerke, custodian, Sanborn and Wilson Elementary. Sally LaFleur, instructional assistant, Thunder Bay Junior High. Laura Ulch, instructional assistant, Thunder Bay Junior High. Lori Delecta, instructional assistant, Alpena High School. Shirley Dingman, cafeteria aide, Thunder Bay Junior High. Samantha Darga, instructional assistant, Ella White Elementary. Anna Markowski, instructional coach, Ella White Elementary. For resignations, Dustin Hooks, science teacher, Thunder Bay Junior High. Shane Wilkinson, welding paraprofessional, Alpena High School. Aaron Sharp, special education teacher, Alpena High School. Taylor Robbins, instructional assistant, Ella White Elementary. Colleen Agelski, instructional assistant, Hinks Elementary. Ariane Rummel, special education teacher, Thunder Bay Junior High. Brittany Giordano, fourth grade teacher, Lincoln Elementary. Jennifer Minton, instructional assistant, Alpena High School. Shannon O'Donnell, special education teacher, Hinks Elementary. For retires, Craig Barrett, online coordinator, Alpena Public Schools with 25 years of service. Nancy Rothenstein, instructional assistant, Wilson Elementary with 30 years of service. Rebecca Hay, office assistant to the principal, Thunder Bay Junior High with 31 years of service. Thank you.
Okay, Okay, we would need a motion to approve the hiring of the new professional staff after completion of proper certification, testing, and other HR requirements.
So moved.
Support.
Okay, any further conversation?
That does not include the rehires, because they've already been through all of that? Or does it?
So they left, so we would be making
You're starting, okay, good, okay.
Okay, any further conversation? Okay, all in favor, show of hands? Okay, thank you. Gifts.
Yes, Dairy Queen donated school supplies, clothing, and toiletry items for Lincoln Elementary School Success Program valued at $75. Walmart donated school supplies to Lincoln Elementary School valued at $200. And I would move to accept the gifts listed above with gratitude and thank the donors in writing for the generous gifts.
Second.
Okay, any further conversation? All right, all in favor, show of hands? Thank you. The next opportunity for citizens and delegations to address the board. All right, seeing no one, continuing on, information and proposals, letters and communications. We have nothing tonight. Reports and information from superintendent and staff.
I will just share, again, it was a great year. Thanks to everyone who helped out, getting the buildings up and ready and going. I'm excited for the year. And we're talking about raising our expectations each and every day. So there'll be more to come on that.
Will the little logo that you had on some of those slides begin to appear on things?
Well, thank you for noticing. Not really. We don't want to create logo confusion.
Right, granted.
So I told the staff it's internal use right now
Yeah,
because it's just
okay.
sort of the theme that we're operating under. If there's an appropriate time to bring it out to the public,
Sure.
we would. But right now, I
Yeah.
just want to keep the standard
Sure.
logo.
Right. And the other thing, I don't know whether it fits here or maybe later, but I watched Stephanie Hitchcock's little video presentation this afternoon, which was a little late for this morning's arrival at Besser, but I think she did a really good job making it possible for anybody who watched that, not parents especially, not to be quite so panicky when they tried to deliver their kids this morning.
Yeah.
Because it went on for 18 or 19 minutes, and she talked about, we can do this and we can do that, but we can't do that yet because it's not ready, or this sort of thing. And she said the building is dusty and dirty right now, because it is, because there hasn't been time to do all that, but she did a really nice job.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of the rest of you have seen that, but it really went well.
And I would say you're correct. It was done very well because, again, it was incredibly smooth this morning.
She said that was her sometime during that, she said that was her 60-second take of recording that. So I don't know how much time she spent with it Sunday. But
I left
she did say
her,
that.
yeah.
So.
Anyway, she
Yeah.
was there Sunday, and
Anyway,
but the fruit of it is that it went very well. People were happy. They were excited to come back. They were calm. They were just happy to be back.
and it didn't hurt that it was a sunny day
Well, yeah.
with a reasonable temperature.
Yes.
True.
Yep.
Mhm.
'Cause we've had some blistering, warm, hot opening days, and that's no fun.
Yep.
Anything else on your end?
Not on my end.
Okay, information and questions from board members.
I have something, I'll just pass this around. Pass that around.
Whoops.
And if anybody would like one, when they get to AJ, pick up, there'll be extras. Anyway, it appears the board has some interest in looking at the question of screen time and media and its effect on our pupils. What you see on this handout is basically just a couple of links that I put together, and I'm going to read a little bit of some of the second ones. This Scott Ritzema, he has a couple of Media on the Brain and the Media Mind, and if you follow that link, you can listen to those online. and they're really quite interesting. He will talk about a lot of the issues in the second two links that I'll discuss, but he really goes into a lot of depth. Now, when you go to the link, you'll see he's a Christian, and there's a lot of information about other activities, but he does have a secular presentation of this information if the board would be interested. He is, I don't think, wildly expensive. He's been to Alpena already once this year.
I think twice, because he was at Rotary.
Twice. Oh, yeah,
as well.
right. Yes, so I'm sure he would be interested in coming to present to, students, faculty, families, whatever.
When he came to Rotary, was he speaking on the same topic, or does he have a plethora of things that
Nope,
he
it
speaks on?
was the same
Okay.
topic.
Yeah. So anyway, then the other two, one of them here, 6 ways digital media impacts the brain. I thought this was really quite interesting. It discusses, actually a couple of different opinions right off the bat. 2 specialists, neuroscientist Susan Greenfield and cognitive science David Chalmers, and their various opinions on this. I've read David Chalmers. He's a philosopher. You can take that for what it's worth. But there are very interesting takes on these things. They highlight the plasticity of the brain and the fact that it will change with varying conditions. In the words of neuropsychologist Joyce Schenkine, our brains adapt, but the process of adaptation is value neutral. We might get smarter or we might get dumber. We're just adapting to the environment. It's kind of interesting. And the author goes on to highlight 6 areas where you have a impact on the brain from digital media. One is attention. Stanford neuroscientist Russ Poldreck has found that learning new information while multitasking can cause that information to go to the wrong part of the brain. Normally, new information goes into the hippocampus, which is responsible for the long-term storage of knowledge. If a student is studying while watching TV, Poldreck warns, the same information might go into the striatum, which is responsible for storing new procedures and skills, not facts and ideas. This means it will be stored in a shallower way, preventing quick retrieval in the future. There's another section on memory. Memory is changing. Our research shows that as we use the internet to support and extend our memory, we become more reliant on it. Whereas before we might have tried to recall something on our own, now we don't bother. As more information becomes available via smartphones and other devices, we become progressively more reliant on it in our daily lives. There's a section on thought. There's a 4th section on empathy. Where's his first name? I didn't highlight his first name. An author named Carr includes a study showing that the more distracted you are, the less able you are to experience empathy. Distractions could make it more difficult for us to experience deep emotions. This kind of culture of constant distraction and interruption undermines not only the attentiveness that leads to deep thoughts, but also the attentiveness that leads to deep connections with other people, which, as I'm reading these, don't these things sound a little bit like what we're experiencing in our classrooms? There's another one on meta-awareness. Some studies suggest that heavy digital media use leads to a loss of cognitive control, not just a loss of attention, but a loss of our ability to control our mind and what we think about. That is a scary one. And another one is about attitude. Hundreds of clinical studies show that screens increase depression, anxiety, and aggression, and can even lead to psychotic-like features where the video gamer loses touch with reality. And there's a Finnish study out published last May in the Journal of Youth and Adolescence. It has linked depression and school burnout to adolescents' excessive internet use. Interestingly, it works both ways. The researchers also found that digital addiction is more likely to happen if adolescents already lack interest in and feel cynicism towards school. So that's just a few of those. There's another study or another article rather, from the Harvard Medical School, and that is a little bit rosier picture, but if you read that, you can read about a study called Growing Up Digital, which is now underway in Canada, which plans to expand into Australia, Finland, and eventually all 6 populated continents in partnership with the nonprofit Sesame Workshop. The investigators follow plan to follow 3,000 to 5,000 youths over 10 years, which should be interesting. And then there's a little bit in this also article about the screen light, blue emitting screen light before bed and its disruption on sleep cycles, and all kinds of stuff. So I just thought I'd share those links, you know, if you're curious about more information. And then again, if we would like to have, again, Scott Ritzma's sessions and presentations really touch on all of this, and I think families particularly might find it of great interest in addition to our faculty. But anyway, there it is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
for sharing.
Dave, I have a question back to your presentation.
Mm-hmm.
The state is only asking for 49% proficiency in math. Was that, did I
Yeah,
get
the
that?
47 point.
Yeah,
yeah.
Something like, yeah,
so less
less than half.
half.
Well, isn't it, it's a goal, right?
Yeah,
If they
it's
look
a
at what your
goal.
starting number was and give
Yeah.
you a goal,
And
right?
then
So,
map it out.
is that right? I mean,
Yeah.
like, they wouldn't say, oh, you're at 25%, your goal's 75%.
So it all,
It's-
yeah,
right?
it came from, what I remember of the history is, you know, we went from No Child Left Behind. The goal was 100% proficiency. And I think that was 5-year period, I don't remember, do you remember? Within 5 years, 100% of the students in America would be proficient.
And that was pretty much special ed kids and kids who are on the move all the time and extended illnesses and all the rest of that. It wasn't just
Yeah.
the normal average kiddo in classroom.
So that process of, and I don't remember if they even used baseline data at that point. I feel like they did, and they gave some, but you then said, okay, we have to grow by proficiency this much each year. And as, you know, we got to year 4, year 5, everyone said, hold on, this isn't gonna happen. And so then, again, as I remember the history, it's just been going through, you know, modifications over and over and over. And, you know, the target is this one year, it's this the next year, it's this, and so on. So I don't remember the whole but ultimately they came up with, I don't even know what it was called at that time.
I think it was a part of the top 10 and 10 with our previous state superintendent. As after we got through No Child Left Behind and the SEA was more like set your goals, and that's how their response was setting goals. So they came up, Anna said, with our starting point.
Yep.
And then projected where we should be each year. That's what I remember.
Yeah,
anyways,
and it
with
sounds
those
about
targets.
right to me.
Yeah.
You know, so the federal government requires that we have some sort of accountability system that measures and then communicates school performance based on whatever measures. And then they leave it up to the state to develop it. So looking across the states, there's all sorts of different ways of doing it. But yeah, I think, you know, he had his top 10 and then he passed away in the middle of that. So then, you know, it kind of got inherited. And the baseline target, I always get that wrong. That was our data. And then they create the 60%, but the 60% is for all students and all districts in the state of Michigan. So I think I said that right earlier. The baseline data was our data. The target is a statewide target.
Thank you. I was actually going to just ask that. So that 47.55, that's what they want everybody in Michigan to hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
No, they spend a lot of time reading this data and giving recommendations. What's the carrot and what's the stick?
Well, that's a great question because it used to have real weight to it. But honestly, as they revamped the school improvement process as well, the accountability scorecard has really taken a back seat. Right now, from what I understand, you know, all the accountability at this point will be, for lack of a better word, public shaming of putting that you didn't meet this target out there. Back in No Child Left Behind, I mean, they were talking real penalties to the districts, you know, state takeover or, you know, ISD takeover, those kind of things. I haven't heard any talk like that tied to accountability right now.
Besides that targeted support, the TSI score.
At
so
the
like
junior
there's
high.
those levels,
Yep.
but even that, it was like, set your goals and determine
Yeah.
So it's kind of like your kids setting their own rules and their own disciplinary actions at the same time.
I can agree with that. Yeah, you know, and again, I don't wanna believe, but like, you look at following the Common Core, the state's focus, the Fed's focus was on Smarter Balanced or PARC, and I can't remember it, but those two computer adaptive tests that they wanted the entire country to use for accountability, because then everyone would be using the same test, and the feds could have data that they could compare. And so, in my previous district, we spent years like realigning for what was gonna be the Smarter Balanced adopted here in Michigan. And then, once again, you know, at the last minute, they pulled that out from the rug, pulled the rug out and said, no, now we're just gonna redo the M-STEP. You know, the M-STEP incorporates Smarter Balanced test items from the item bank standpoint, so they did develop it. But the Smarter Balanced test was supposed to be from beginning to end, a Smarter Balanced test. Just moving the target, moving it, you know, and we have to go through and align our curriculum with the benchmarks, with the tested items and those kind of things.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, and please do if I'm incorrect here, but regardless of testing modality, following implementation of Common Core, we continue a downward trend in math scores. Is that incorrect? Because that would have been around 2014, 2012, somewhere in there?
2010, the Common Core
2010?
was rolled out.
Okay.
So we talked about the nice little shell game is that the M-STEP, you can't go back prior to 13, 14, the M-STEP
Okay.
came around. So prior to that, it was the MEP.
Right.
And, you know, that was the idea. The MEP's not aligned to the Common Core state standards, the Smarter Balanced is. So then you get to the year you were supposed to do the Smarter Balanced, and they said, nope, now it's the M-STEP. And if you remember, that first year that we administered the M-STEP across the state of Michigan, they had to drop the cut scores that they initially planned because they found, 70% of the students didn't pass it. So they dropped the bar, and all of a sudden, and we're talking statewide, we're not talking just,
I guess-
So we can't really go back and see beyond, the whatever it is, what it was. I mean, you can see trends, but you can't, it's not a consistent line because of that assessment break.
I guess it still kind of boggles my mind that the state is only asking us to meet 47%. So out of 3,500 kids, we're just telling half of them, see ya.
Yeah.
Kind of like, asking a doctor to only be good half of the time. That'd be
Hey,
wonderful.
you'd be in good shape, Eric.
Yeah. I'm not disagreeing with you, that's just, it is the M-STEP, it's a standardized test. We're not having those expectations, we want to certainly be better than that.
I hope so, I guess
Yeah.
as the leader of the district.
Yeah. But I share in your, it's just been a whole career of shaking your head at, some things you can tell there's good intentions, and then others, they're just checking a box somewhere. 'Cause they
And
have
no
to.
matter what we start, 3 or 4 years down the line, it's gonna change anyway. So we can't look 5 years back because the test is new, or the number of items is new, or it's at a different time of the year, or something.
Mhm.
We've been doing that since MEP was created
Yeah.
back in the last century, and it's still happening.
And, that brings a good point. I know we touched on it briefly a while ago. If they keep moving the test, so that we can never get actual measurable data, can we implement something at a district level so we can see longitudinally how we're doing?
Yeah, and that's the goal, even if that test is there. The NWEA does give us good data, and it's quick data. We get it back quickly. and
But I guess, 10 years from now, is that testing modality going to be pertinent, or?
Yeah, over a 10-year, I'm sure it can be done, but, that the longer you go, it's harder to keep that test consistent. But, yes, we definitely need internal ways to assess where we are and, predict how we're gonna perform on those tests. And then hopefully that gives us, many years of data to use.
Anything else on this topic?
I have one thing, back to Eric's screen time. I've been talking to teachers over the district and trying to collect data to find out what computer programs they're using, how much they're using it, having to, differentiate between the actual, using your projector to project a lesson up, should we consider that screen time or whatever. But then there was another teacher that came up, and when you said with that gentleman that comes to speak, she also said that maybe we should start helping educate our parents and doing workshops to show them that, limiting their screen time, including television at home, but maybe they just don't have the tools or they just don't know the data of how this can affect their children. So she wanted to know, she just came out with maybe we could do like a workshop or something at the different schools, maybe even getting this gentleman to come speak, just something that nature, just to help out our parents with this issue too. So, but I'm still going around and collecting, and I have a couple of items of what a couple of teachers that I spoke with are using and how much they're using it and what they're, I forget what she called it. It's in their not entitlements, engagements in their curriculum with this particular school that they're using Imagine Math and Math Facts. And she gave me the specific times that they're supposed to be using it and how many minutes per week.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just asking different teachers what they're using, just getting an idea.
Yeah.
So.
Just follow up on that. One of the things that Scott talks about is, I don't remember the numbers, but there was a measure for kids' screen time.
Mm-hmm.
And it looked like a lot. And when you read that number, you think, oh boy, that's bad news. The parents were only like a little bit behind that. So education for parents about screen time and modeling good screen time behavior would be very useful.
And the programs that we are using, especially the two that I just spoke of, seem to be, I think I've used them before, but they seem to work and they seem to help kids extend their skill if they've learned or not learned that skill to help them moving on. So, yeah, and helping our parents educate them on.
Or even the older kids.
Even
for
the
high
older
schoolers
kids.
to realize,
You
this
know,
endless scrolling, like this is what it does
Right.
to your brain.
This
and-
is what it does to your brain, and why don't you put the phone down and talk with your friends, instead of, so it's just trying to get that data together for.
Yeah. One of the things I talked to, one of my priorities is partnering with parents. And so I pulled up a couple of those board policies, and in the parent/family engagement policy, it kind of talks about what you were talking about, educating. We need to educate our parents on our policies. We need to educate them on, screen usage and all sorts of things. So I'm looking forward to finding ways to deliver that information out on a whole host of topics that can benefit our community and our parents. And with that, then they can hopefully better support us as well.
Also, that video you did about the highlight,
Yes.
that I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah, if you had, I put a link to a
On the
vape
email.
company website.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
but it looks,
It looks
it's
just
not
like what
even as.
Eric's putting away very quickly, so we
Yeah, it
don't know
does.
whether that's
Yeah.
really a highlight.
Yeah,
or
we
not.
don't know
Yeah.
if that is, but it's like square, and it looks like the square ones that you can use, and it's just, it's,
They're vapes
Scary.
that
Look like
you cannot
highlighters.
tell are not highlighters. And it's just,
in all different flavors.
as I wrote, I just don't understand
I
how
know.
they can be doing this. I don't understand why they would be, I do.
You know why
It's-
they're telling
Yeah,
us.
So
but
it's
boy,
yeah.
it's just another stress on our teachers. What is
Well,
that?
Again, going into educating, like that's another
Educating
one, I
them.
feel like
Yeah.
Another program through the
that's-
PTA or something.
first,
Yeah.
kids that realize, like, I've heard so many young people say, oh, it's better than smoking,
Yeah.
and I think it's not better than smoking, just think part of that when we get the settlement from the vapes, and I know the detectors are great, but I think a big component of it needs to be education too, and not just, the detectors, but, So making kids aware of what this is doing to their bodies, so.
Yeah.
I had a couple of things. One, I saw the article on True North Radio today with your estimated enrollment, and Mary's not here, so I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but do you know how that kind of compares to last year?
Yeah, right
roughly?
now, we're up, I would be comfortable saying up at least 10 students. It's probably more than that right now. There will be some,
Yep.
fluctuating here and there, but, it's amazing when the buses drive through the neighborhoods, we get a flood of people coming over. So we had 7 today, by noon when I was here.
10?
10 today, yeah. And then I was over at Lincoln, and Jeanette was saying, a couple came in and asked, how do I register? So could be the same ones that ended up coming over here, or it could be 2 more. We are in, what did Mary just, anyway, we're in a solid position. We're not concerned about it this year, and I believe we'll be up ultimately.
Great. And I had one other thing, and to not to take away from great recruiting that the district did. I saw that article too about how many new teachers were hired for the year. Was it 54, something like that?
At that time, it was 54 staff members.
54 staff members, so great hiring. Always a little concerning when we see resignations or early retirements or whatever. Do we, as a district, or something the board can consider, do we do any sort of exit interviews or exit surveys for staff?
Yep.
So yes,
Do you mind coming up? I just want to make, because I know people have said on our last one, if we're not utilizing the microphone, they can't hear so well on YouTube, sorry.
Yes, so in the past, we've been a little spotty with it, but that's something that the HR office has been working on is increasing our exit interviews.
Okay.
So now and going forward, we're going to be conducting more than we ever have.
Okay, and do you share those with the board, or is that something that's usually just within the office? Do you feel like people are honest with their answers? If they're being done through personnel office, they're not.
So honestly, do I think they're being honest? I think it's probably about 50%.
Not bad.
And
It's better than our testing.
a big piece of it is a big piece of it is that people often look at it like, what if they want to come back?
Right.
They don't want to burn a bridge.
Yep.
But I think you can definitely get information out of there. I would not feel comfortable sharing individual responses.
Yep.
But I would feel comfortable sharing data that's been aggregated to show a trend. But I wouldn't want to share specifics.
Yeah, I think that'd just be great to kind of see, like, I know we did such great work, you all did great work on the new contracts and working to make sure we can recruit, but also there's just obviously a need to make sure that we're, holding on to our great staff. And I know, education, it's a tough place to be right now. I mean, I keep watching the news, there's districts all over that are scrambling for administrators and teachers to start the school year, and bus drivers, and so so important to try to hold on to everybody and not lose them to other places when it's slim pickings. So I would really like to see a push to make sure we're doing some sort of exit interviews or surveys, at least, to see if there's anything we can be doing better to keep our good staff with us, so.
On that subject, probably Raymond does this, or companies like them. They'll do assessments or interviews for you, and that way, if you've got a third party, sometimes you can be a little more confident in the information, because they might not want to be honest with their former employer, but they would tell a third party.
Yep.
Those sorts of things.
Well, I think the majority of people will be honest, but the question always gets asked, who's this data going to be shared with?
Mm-hmm.
And I try to be very honest with them and say, at this point, it's myself and the superintendent. And if it needs to be shared beyond that point, then it's aggregated data. But if they thought for a minute that they would be sharing it with myself or with Dave or anybody that was APS, I think that data I think their conversation in most cases would get watered down because, again, they don't want to burn those bridges. Yeah. Even though they wouldn't be burning a bridge.
It's their perception.
It's the perception, yeah.
And we, they leave for a whole host of reasons. Pay is often one, depending on the employee group. And again, we've settled contracts, we've come to letters of agreements, so that we are competing with a job market that I don't think we've ever seen before, where you can go to, someplace, Home Depot or wherever, and make a whole lot more than you could have 5 years ago. And so we're conscious of that and doing what we can. It's just important for everyone in the community to know that when you have collectively bargained agreements, that process moves slower than we would like it to, perhaps. Just know that we recognize that people have choices, and we're doing our best to work with the groups to get the compensation where it needs to be, with the full realization that 3 years from now, we can be having very different conversations if, this bubble that we're in, and not APS, that our state and nation is in, if it pops, we're gonna be in a bad spot. So we always need to be conservative with the district funds, but also properly recognize our employees.
Thanks. Thanks for answering that. Anything else? Okay, I think I seem to have lost my agenda. Okay, there we go. Nothing further from the board? Okay, in advanced planning, September 18th, the new hire reception here at central office at 4:45. Immediately following will be our workshop meeting here in the boardroom at 5:30. And then the following Monday on September 25th, the regular meeting at 5:30 at the Alpena High School auditorium. And with that, we will adjourn.
Yeah.